I woke up early this morning with an idea in my head. I had been browsing Craigslist for weeks, trying to find a unique business venture that my friends and I could invest in. We were all feeling restless and looking for something new to sink our teeth into, and we had finally found it. An old abandoned bus that we could convert into a mobile coffee shop. Excitedly, I texted my friends, and we quickly made plans to meet up at the bus and check it out. We were all dressed in our comfiest clothes, ready to spend the day cleaning and transforming the bus into our dream business. As we drove out to the remote location where the bus was parked, we couldn't help but notice the eerie silence of the surrounding area. The trees were dense and the air was thick with humidity, making it difficult to breathe. Upon arrival, we began examining the old bus. It was run down and in desperate need of repair, but we could see the potential. As we worked, we chatted and laughed, excited for the future of our new business. But as the day wore on, strange things started happening. Objects would move on their own, and we would hear whispers and footsteps coming from the trees. Our laughter turned to nervous jokes as we tried to brush off the odd occurrences. As the sun began to set, we decided to call it a day and head back to the city. But as we packed up our tools and belongings, we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. Frozen with fear, we waited in silence for a moment before frantically running towards our car. As we drove away, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The darkness outside seemed to be closing in on us, and the hairs on the back of our necks stood on end. We made a vow to never return to that bus, and to this day we still don't know what happened there. But every time I browse Craigslist now, I can't help but wonder what other horrors are hiding just beneath the surface of the mundane. As we drove away from the abandoned bus, our hearts were pounding in our chests. We tried to make sense of what had just happened, but nothing seemed to add up. It was as if the very air around us was thick with a supernatural presence. We drove in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I spoke up. "Guys, do you think we should go to the police?" My friends exchanged nervous glances, but it was clear we were all thinking the same thing. We had stumbled upon something that was way beyond our pay grade. But as we discussed the possibility of getting the authorities involved, something else caught our attention. On the radio, there was a news report about a string of disappearances in the area. People had been going missing without a trace, and the local police were at a loss as to what was happening. Our hearts sank as we realized that we may have stumbled upon something far more sinister than we had initially thought. As we drove, the darkness outside seemed to press in on us even more. We were all on edge, hyper-aware of every sound and movement. Suddenly, we heard a loud banging on the roof of our car. We all screamed in unison, but then we saw the source of the noise. It was just a branch that had fallen from a nearby tree, but in that moment, it felt like something out of a nightmare. We all let out a shaky laugh, relieved that it was just a false alarm. But then we heard another noise, this one much more ominous. It was a low growling sound, coming from the back of the car. We all froze, not daring to turn around. And then, out of nowhere, the car was jolted violently. It felt as if something had hit us from behind. We screamed and swerved off the road, coming to a stop in a ditch. We were all in a state of shock, but we knew we had to get out of there. We scrambled out of the car and began to run, not looking back until we were miles away. We eventually made it back to civilization, but we never spoke of that day again. We had all felt a darkness that day, and we knew that it was something that we would never be able to fully explain. Days turned into weeks, and we tried to go about our daily lives as if nothing had happened. But we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide something sinister, every creak in the floorboards made our hearts skip a beat. And then one night, I woke up to the sound of scratching at my window. I was frozen with fear, too afraid to move or even breathe. The scratching continued, getting louder and more insistent. And then I saw it. A pair of glowing eyes, staring back at me through the glass. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the eyes were gone. I spent the rest of the night huddled under my covers, praying for morning to come quickly. But even in the light of day, the fear never fully went away. My friends were experiencing similar things. Strange phone calls in the middle of the night, unexplained scratches on their doors, and the constant feeling of being followed. It was as if the darkness that had surrounded us at the abandoned bus had followed us home. We tried to ignore it, to tell ourselves that it was just our imaginations running wild. But then one day, one of my friends went missing. We searched for her frantically, scouring the city for any sign of her. But it was as if she had vanished without a trace. And then, just when we thought all hope was lost, we received a package in the mail. Inside was a single Polaroid picture of my friend tied up and gagged in an unfamiliar location. We knew then that we were dealing with something far more sinister than we had ever imagined. We went to the police, but they didn't believe us. They told us that there was no evidence of foul play, that our friend had probably just run away. But we knew the truth. We knew that something was hunting us, something that we couldn't see or touch. We banded together, determined to fight back against the darkness that had enveloped us. But every day, we knew that we were one step closer to becoming its next victim. As the days passed, we became more and more paranoid. We didn't trust anyone, not even each other. The fear had consumed us, and we knew that we needed to find a way to fight back. We started researching, trying to find any information that could help us. We discovered that the abandoned bus we had found was part of a string of locations that were rumored to be haunted by a malevolent spirit. According to the rumors, this spirit was said to be responsible for the disappearances in the area. We knew that we had to face our fears and confront the spirit head-on. We gathered supplies and weapons, and we set out to the abandoned bus once again. As we approached the bus, we could feel the air growing colder and heavier. The very ground beneath our feet seemed to be alive with a malevolent energy. But we didn't falter. We pushed forward, determined to put an end to this once and for all. Inside the bus, we found a hidden room that we had missed before. It was covered in strange symbols and markings, and we knew that this was where the spirit was hiding. We lit candles and chanted ancient spells, trying to banish the spirit from this plane of existence. But it didn't go as planned. The spirit fought back, and we found ourselves in a battle for our very lives. We fought with everything we had, using our weapons and spells to try and destroy the spirit once and for all. In the end, we emerged victorious. The spirit was banished, and we knew that we were safe once again. But the memories of that day stayed with us forever. We had faced our fears, and we had come out the other side stronger. We never spoke of that day again, but we knew that we had done something incredible. We had fought back against the darkness that had consumed us, and we had won. And for that, we would always be grateful. Despite our victory over the malevolent spirit, the experience had left us scarred. We were more cautious than ever before, always looking over our shoulders and double-checking every lock. But we knew that we couldn't let our fear control us forever. We needed to find a way to move on, to reclaim our lives and our sense of safety. So we started going to therapy, talking through our experiences, and trying to make sense of what had happened. It was a slow process, but little by little, we started to feel like ourselves again. And then one day, we received a message on Craigslist. It was from someone claiming to have information about the spirit that had haunted us. We were hesitant at first, but something about the message felt familiar. We arranged to meet the sender at a nearby coffee shop, still wary but hopeful that we might finally find some closure. When we arrived, we saw a person sitting alone at a table in the corner. They were dressed in dark clothes, with their face partially obscured by a hood. We approached them cautiously, trying to get a better look at their face. But before we could say anything, the person spoke. I know what you're looking for, they said, their voice low and gravelly. But be warned, the information I have comes at a price. We hesitated, unsure of what to do. But something in the person's eyes made us feel like they could be trusted. Tell us what you know, I said, my voice shaking slightly. The person leaned in close, their eyes locked onto ours. The spirit that haunted you was once a human, they said. A person who had been wronged and was seeking revenge. They went on to explain that the person had died before they could exact their revenge, and that their spirit had been trapped in the abandoned bus as a result. But why did it come after us? One of my friends asked. Because you stumbled upon the bus, the person said. And the spirit saw you as a threat. It wanted to make sure that you wouldn't tell anyone about what you had seen. We sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything that had been said. But how did you know all of this? Another friend asked. The person leaned back in their chair, their face still shrouded in shadow. Let's just say that I have my ways, they said cryptically. And then, before we could ask any more questions, they got up and left the coffee shop, disappearing into the crowds. We were left with more questions than answers, but we knew that we were one step closer to understanding what had happened to us. And for the first time since the nightmare had begun, we felt a glimmer of hope. We spent the next few weeks trying to track down the mysterious stranger who had given us information about the malevolent spirit. We scoured the internet, went to local events, and even posted a message on Craigslist asking for information, but no one seemed to know who they were. Despite our best efforts, we began to feel like we were at a dead end. But then, one day, we received a strange message from an anonymous source. The message simply read, "I know who you are looking for. Meet me at the abandoned bus at midnight." We were hesitant to go back to the bus, but our curiosity got the best of us. We agreed to meet the sender and went to the bus that night, armed with weapons and spells just in case. When we arrived, we saw a figure standing in the shadows. As we got closer, we realized that it was the mysterious stranger who had given us information about the malevolent spirit. "Who are you?" we asked, still unsure if we could trust them. "My name is unimportant," they replied. "What is important is that you listen to what I have to say." They went on to explain that the malevolent spirit had not been the only one haunting the area. There were other spirits that had been trapped in the abandoned bus, and they were growing stronger by the day. "The spirits are angry," the stranger said. "They want revenge on the living for trapping them here. And they will stop at nothing to get it." We listened in horror as the stranger went on to describe the horrific things that had happened to people who had crossed the spirits' paths. We knew that we had to do something to stop them. But what could we do? We were just ordinary people, with no special abilities or knowledge of the supernatural. The stranger seemed to sense our fear and hesitance. "You can banish the spirits," they said. "But you will need to work together and use everything at your disposal." We nodded, unsure of what we were getting ourselves into. But we knew that we had to try. And so, we spent the next few weeks researching and preparing for the battle ahead. We studied ancient spells and rituals, gathered weapons and talismans, and tried to strengthen our minds and bodies for what was to come. Finally, the night arrived. We returned to the abandoned bus, ready to face the spirits and put an end to their reign of terror. The battle was long and grueling, and we lost many friends along the way. But in the end, we emerged victorious. The spirits were banished, and the area was finally at peace. We knew that we would never forget the horrors that we had faced, but we also knew that we had done something incredible. We had saved our community from the grip of malevolent spirits, and for that, we would always be proud. As we stood there, victorious but battered and bruised, we heard a faint whisper in the air. It was a mournful, haunting voice, and it seemed to be coming from the shadows. We approached cautiously, weapons at the ready. But as we got closer, we realized that there was no enemy waiting for us. Instead, we saw a ghostly figure floating in front of us, its face twisted in agony. "Who are you?" we asked, still reeling from the battle we had just fought. "I am the spirit of the person who was trapped in the bus," the figure replied. "I have been waiting for someone to come and free me from this curse." We were shocked. We had never expected to find a living person trapped among the spirits. But as the figure spoke, we realized that they were telling the truth. They went on to explain that they had been a homeless person who had taken shelter in the abandoned bus. When the malevolent spirit had taken over, they had been trapped inside, unable to escape. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, the figure said. I watched as the malevolent spirit wreaked havoc on the living, and I knew that I was doomed to be trapped here forever. Tears streamed down our faces as we listened to the figure's story. We realized that we had not only saved our community from the spirits, but we had also saved this poor soul from a fate worse than death. But as we reached out to help the figure, something strange began to happen. The air around us grew colder, and the figure's form began to fade. "I am at peace now," the figure said, as it disappeared into the darkness. "But you must remember that there are many more like me, trapped in the shadows, waiting for someone to come and set them free." With those final words, the figure was gone, leaving us alone in the abandoned bus. We left that place with heavy hearts, knowing that there were many more lost souls like the one we had just met. And though we had won the battle against the spirits, we knew that the war against the unknown horrors of the world would never truly be over.